Yeah.
How many days would you show up at 5:30, 6 o'clock and then not get it that day? How long would you have to stay?
I'm going to say that, now during one period, because I have a bad knee, I had to be gone every Tuesday to get shots in my knee. But in good times, you're going to get you out 4 days a week, maybe even 5. In bad times, 2 or 3. And if you're really young or really gung-ho, we had one woman there who would work, let's say, 7 to 3 on one job, come in the labor hall, get paid in 3, and say, you got any night work? And so some people working 12 hours, some of them 16. And then we had a lot of people who had like graveyard shift jobs in warehouses, would come in the labor hall when they got off their regular job and try to pick up at least 4 hours in the labor hall. Because one thing I discovered is that in the blue collar today, if you're making ends meet, it's because you're getting 10 hours of overtime or have 2 jobs, one or the other. Nobody's making it on 40 hours. And on the jobs where we would work, the regular workers would brag to me, like at the culvert plant, hey, you ought to go to work here, this is a good job. We get 55 hours. And it's just rampant. One of the reasons there's more overtime is that it's cheaper to hire, let's say, 3 guys at 60 hours a week, paying them time and a half, than it is to hire 1 and pay benefits. And it's because of this medical insurance problem. So most regular employees on blue-collar jobs have an opportunity to get overtime, and they need it. And they brag about it. I only worked 5 days. There was also work on Saturdays if you wanted it, but I didn't come in. Yeah.
What kind of housing situation do most people have?
Almost all of them have a room, which usually means I'm living in my brother's house, my mother's house, or my aunt's house. That's pretty standard. We might have had 10% of the guys live in homeless shelters. And among the women, it was higher. A lot of the women were in homeless shelters with their children, which is, it's not like what you think of as a homeless shelter for a man. They have a little cubicle somewhere in a homeless shelter. I'd say among the women, it might have been 30% homeless. But most of the men, they got a room somewhere. And the white lady I was telling you about who dreamed about the $10, she had rented a room 1 block from the labor hall. And so she could walk to work. Yeah.
Obviously, you must have taught politics, it sounds like, even though it sounds like a lot of these guys weren't in a position to vote. Do you have a perception of where they stood politically?
Well, first of all, those who were ex-convicts, and there's a certain crowd of them who I think I admired more than anybody else. They didn't know they could vote. They could, when you off parole. But the only person who ever talked politics, I talk about him in a book, was a white guy we call Captain America. He showed up in army fatigues, army hat, always talking army this, army that. One day he showed up in a Confederate t-shirt. Everybody just kind of laughed at him. It's Captain America being Captain America. And he was always preaching the Rush Limbaugh line, Glenn Beck stuff, right? Carrying books, showing them to us. But really the only political comment I heard was one morning, somebody mentioned Obama and everybody said, yeah, support the brother. And one time there was a discussion in a car about how the drift of the discussion was, why did Bill Clinton move his office to Harlem? The conclusion of the discussion was he wanted in on the heroin trade. Why else would a white man move to Harlem? And the coda was, well, you know that's why George Bush went into Afghanistan. He went into that heroin trade. So see, you're dealing with people who, they can talk a lot about sports and cars and celebrities. But they don't read newspapers, and they don't know. And it's just what comes natural. One day, one guy came to me and he said, I see you keep talking to those Mexican workers, and they must really have it bad to come up here, don't they? Are times really hard in their country? And I try to talk to him, and he says, well, whose fault is that? Who is their president? Castro? You see, they don't know. And I think there are a great number of people like that in this country. Go to a bus station sometime. You'll see them there. They don't know, they don't pay any attention, they don't believe there's nothing they can do about it. And so you would not hear a dispute about Hillary Clinton's trip to Pakistan. Never happened, right? Or the medical care debate. You're not going to hear it. They're going to be sympathetic to the idea of free medical care because they need it. But that's as far as it goes. They're like the rest of the American people. They've gone apolitical. All right. Well, I thank you all for spending time listening to this old man. And